the author is trying to say. He's trying to say, look, go back to the Old Testament. Go back to Genesis. Everybody that's mentioned in Genesis has their descendants and their ancestors mentioned. So-and-so is the son of so-and-so. So-and-so is the son of so-and-so. You know all those passages you skipped over when you're doing the read through the Bible in a year thing? When it's like so-and-so, son of so-and-so, it's like reading the phone book. That's why they're in there. To show where people came from, where their descendants came from, who their ancestors were. Melchizedek doesn't have any father, mother mentioned in Scripture. He doesn't have anybody that comes after him like Levi did, and Aaron, who was one of his descendants, and all the Levites that came out of the tribe of Levi that served as priest. And that's the point the author's trying to make here. This Melchizedek is different. Now, the author of Hebrews jumps on that last part we looked at in Genesis, where it says that Abraham gave a tithe, gave a tenth to Melchizedek. Let's read the text, verse 4. Just think how great he was. That is Melchizedek. Even the patriarch Abraham gave him a tenth of the plunder. Now, the law requires the descendants of Levi to become priests to collect tenth from the people. That is, their brothers, even though the brothers are descendants of Abraham. Let's unpack that for a minute. The Old Testament said that the Levites, when they went into the promised land, were not going to get any land to inherit. Instead, because they were the priests, they were going to be supported by the people. And everybody would bring a tenth of what they made every year and give it to the Levites. And that's how they would support themselves, support their families. They didn't have any land, they couldn't grow crops. And so they got a tenth from their brothers, from the people that were in the family. Okay? Got that clear? Because here's the point that our writer's writing. This man, that is Melchizedek, did not trace his descent from Levi. Yet he collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. And without doubt, the lesser person is blessed by the greater. So in other words, Melchizedek is getting a tithe. Melchizedek is recognized by Abraham as somehow being greater than him. And in verse 8 it says, in this case, the tenth is collected by men who died. That is, the Levites. But in the other case, by him who is declared to be living. One might even say that Levi, who collects the tenth, paid the tenth through Abraham. Because when Melchizedek met Abraham, Levi was still in the body of his ancestor. And they're saying, wait a minute, you just lost me. I'm confused. Again, let me try to unpack this for you. Melchizedek gets the tithe, gets the 10% of what Abraham captured. And so, because Abraham doesn't have any kids yet, and we're waiting for Isaac, Jacob, and Levi to come along. In the Old Testament mind, those descendants were contained inside of Abraham. It's like my great-grandkids, before I had children, were contained in me. And if my kids ever get married and give me grandkids, and then their kids have great-grandkids, those are still potential. Those kids are potentially inside of me. And so what basically the author is saying is that Melchizedek is far better than the Old Testament priests, including the priest of Levi. Because he is superior. And that's what the rest of Hebrews goes on to argue, that Jesus serves as our great high priest, just like Melchizedek was different than the priest that came out of Levi. And that's the background of what I want to talk to you about now. is that in Jesus Christ, we have a great high priest who represents us to God in a way that no earthly priest could do. Turn back in Hebrews, to Hebrews 2:7. Hebrews 2:17. The writer of Hebrews is talking about how Jesus had to be made like his brothers. And in every way, in order to become a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God, that he might make atonement for the sins of his people. You see, the priest would have to offer up sacrifices for themselves first. They were sinful people. They were people that were just like you and I in terms of their flaws, in terms of their broken relationship with God. But when Jesus comes on the scene, he's perfect. He's God's Son. He never sins. He doesn't have to offer up a sacrifice for himself. He doesn't have to take a bull or a ram or a goat and offer up an animal sacrifice for himself. He is the sacrifice. He offers himself for us. And it's interesting how in the Old Testament sacrificial system there was this distance between God and man. If you were to come to the tabernacle or you would come to the temple, you would bring your offering to God. But you didn't get to go in and present it yourself. It would be washed and cleansed and prepared by the priest. And they would go into the place where only the priest could go and would offer up the sacrifices. And as I mentioned, once a year, the high priest could go inside the Holy of Holies, inside that most sacred spot, and offer up that sacrifice for the sins of the people. And the idea was that you had to stay far away from God. You couldn't get too close. But now Jesus enables you and I to have a personal relationship with him. To have a personal relationship with the living God. And my all-time favorite hymn is one that we sing called "And Can It Be That I Should Gain." It's written by a guy from 16th century England named Charles Wesley. 17th century England, excuse me. And I love the last verse as we sing it. Because he talks about in the hymn about how we were enslaved by sin. And Wesley writes, "No condemnation now I dread. Jesus and all in him is mine. Alive in him and my living head, clothed in righteousness divine. Bold I approach the eternal throne and claim the crown through Christ my own." See, today you can know forgiveness. You can know a restored relationship with God. You can know the Most High God on an intimate level. That's what Jesus does for us as our great high priest. But he does more for us. He acts with generous help in a time of need. I love the two quotes that are famously attributed to Oscar Wilde about temptation. Oscar Wilde wrote, "The only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it." And he also wrote, "I can resist everything but temptation." You ever feel that way in your battle with temptation? Anger, bitterness, manipulating people, lust, overeating. Whatever is the temptation that you deal with,